I never imagined I'd fall in love with a rat. It started like any other ordinary day, though looking back, nothing had been ordinary since. I had spent the morning sorting through a new batch of vintage baseball cards that had arrived in the mail. Some real treasures in there: a 1933 Gowdy Lou Gehrig, a T206 Ty Cobb, and a few others that would make any collector salivate. Holding those pieces of history in my hands gave me peace, a tangible connection to a simpler time. There was something soothing about the pristine feel of those old cards sealed under plexiglass that made me feel like everything was in its place. Safe, but that was before she came into my life. I had just locked up the cards in the safe and was heading to the backyard when I noticed something strange near the shed. At first, I thought it was just a large rat. This neighborhood wasn't exactly free of vermin, so I was used to seeing them scurrying through the alleyways. But this rat was different. She was bigger, limping, and covered in wounds, bleeding, in fact. But it wasn't just the size or the injuries that caught my eye. There was something human about her. The closer I got, the more my stomach churned. She wasn't just some oversized rodent. She had the face of a woman, a horribly disfigured one, yes, but unmistakably human. Her eyes were wide and sorrowful, her nose elongated, her skin mottled and patched with fur, but there was an intelligence there. A quiet, desperate plea in those eyes that I couldn't ignore. I should have run, right? I should have freaked out, called animal control, done anything except what I did next. But instead, I crouched down slowly, my heart pounding like a drum, and held out my hand. She flinched, scurrying back slightly on her half-human, half-rat limbs. But she didn't run away. "Hey," I whispered, not even sure if she could understand me. "I'm not gonna hurt you." She watched me, her breath ragged. I couldn't take my eyes off her, despite how repulsive she looked. There was something gentle about her demeanor, something that made me forget the grotesque body she was trapped in. I don't know why, but I decided then and there to take her in. I carried her into my shed. She was light, too light for a person her size, but then again, she wasn't quite human, was she? I cleared off an old workbench and made a makeshift bed with some old towels. She curled up immediately, her eyes never leaving mine. There was something so strange in those eyes. Fear, trust, maybe a little hope. I grabbed some bread from the kitchen and brought it back. She ate slowly, watching me the entire time. Her movements were awkward, as if her body wasn't made for them. But she was grateful, I could tell. As the days passed, she began to heal. I didn't know where she came from, and every time I tried to ask, she'd just look at me with those sad, confused eyes. She didn't speak much, only a word or two here and there, but I began to piece things together. She had no memory of who she was before she became this thing. All she knew was survival. But I cared for her, and as she got better, she became something more to me than just a strange creature. She became a companion. No, she became her. I started calling her Cora. Cora had this quiet, almost haunting beauty despite her deformities. Her presence was calming, soothing even, in a way I couldn't explain. She'd wait for me by the shed every day after I finished working on my baseball cards, or dealing with collectors who came by to make offers. I'd spend hours in there with her, talking about nothing, about life, about my work. She didn't understand much of it at first, but she listened intently, always with that same soft expression. "Do you like baseball?" I asked one evening as we sat side by side, the soft glow of the shed's old light casting strange shadows on her face. I held a card in my hand, a 1933 Lou Gehrig, a true gem of my collection. She tilted her head, her large, dark eyes following the movement of the card as if trying to make sense of it. Baseball. Her voice was soft, hesitant, like it hurt her to speak. It wasn't surprising, given how strange her body was. I often wondered what it must feel like to live between forms, between human and animal. "Yeah," I said, smiling. "It's a game, a pretty important one, too. See this guy here?" I held the card closer so she could see Gehrig's face. Lou Gehrig, one of the greatest players of all time. Strong as an ox, but gentle, you know? He played first base for the Yankees. It's said that when Gehrig got sick, The whole country wept for him. People loved him. Even today, people still talk about him. He was more than just a player. He was, well, a symbol, I guess. Cora blinked, her eyes still on the card. Symbol. Yeah, that's right. People collect these cards to remember guys like him. It's not just about money. It's about history, about connecting to something bigger. She nodded slowly, as if absorbing my words. You like history. I love it. It's like holding on to pieces of time, pieces that might otherwise be forgotten. Cora's eyes flickered, and for a moment I thought I saw something in her gaze. Something like understanding. As the days turned into weeks, Cora grew stronger, more curious. She'd ask me about the cards sometimes, asking simple questions like, who is this? Or why is it special? She didn't know anything before she became the creature she was now, but she wanted to learn. One night, while we were sitting together, she turned to me with a serious expression. Jack, cards safe? I laughed softly. Yeah, they're safe. They're locked in a safe in the house. Only I know the combination. Her eyes widened a bit. Only, yep, I said, smiling. It's my birthday. Cora smiled back, but there was something behind that smile that I couldn't quite place. I brushed it off as her being curious. She was learning after all, and I was happy to teach her. A few days later, Phil Dorn showed up. I should have known things were too good to last when he knocked on the door. Phil was an old collector I dealt with for years. Slimy, sleazy, but filthy rich. He knew his stuff, but there was something about him that always rubbed me the wrong way. He knocked on the door like he owned the place, his greasy smile plastered on his face. Hey, Jack, I heard you got your hands on some real beauties, he said, stepping into my living room without waiting for an invite. I hated him, but business was business. I opened the display cases, showing him the Gehrig, the Cobb, and a few others he might be interested in. He examined each one with the same fake enthusiasm he always had. I knew he didn't appreciate these cards like I did. He saw them as investments, nothing more. Phil picked up the Ty Cobb card with a certain glint in his eye. You know, Cobb was a real bastard, he said, smirking. Yeah, I nodded. Meanest guy to ever play the game. Racist, violent. But man, could he hit? Phil chuckled. Funny how the worst people can be the best at something, huh? I didn't answer. I hated talking about Cobb like that. Sure, he was no saint, but those cards represented more than just the man. They represented the game, the history, the legacy. It didn't sit right with me how Phil reduced everything to the lowest common denominator. He made an offer, a good one, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the way he looked at me, like I was just another chump he could screw over. Or maybe it was because I knew deep down that these cards meant more to me than just money. I told him I wasn't interested. Phil's face darkened. He wasn't used to hearing no, especially not from someone like me. But before he could leave, his eyes darted to the backyard. What's that? He asked, his voice low and curious. I froze. He must have seen something. Maybe the way the shed door was slightly ajar, or the glimpse of movement inside. My stomach dropped. Nothing. Just some storage, I said quickly, trying to steer him back to the door. But it was too late. Phil pushed past me, heading toward the shed. I caught up to him just as he flung the door open, and there she was, Cora, huddled in the corner, staring wide-eyed at the intruder. My heart raced. I wanted to protect her, hide her away from the world. Phil's face twisted into a sick grin. Well, 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 what do we have here? Leave her alone, I growled, stepping in front of him. But Phil wasn't interested in me. His eyes were locked on Cora, and for the first time, I saw something in him I hadn't before. Greed. Not just for money, but for something else. Something darker. I tried to pull him out of the shed, but he turned to me with that same slimy grin. I think we can make a deal, Jack, he said, his voice low. I'll take her off your hands, and in return, I'll make sure those cards of yours never leave your safe. I clenched my fists. Get out. Phil shrugged, backing away. Suit yourself, but I'd be careful, Jack. You never know who you can trust. He left, but his words lingered. We were sitting in the shed, and she was drinking milk from a bowl in those strange half-human licks she'd developed. "Jack," she said softly, "are the cards really safe? So many people come." I laughed, trying to brush off the worry in her voice. "Yeah, they're safe. Like I said, only I know the combination." She smiled a little too sweetly. "And the combination is your birthday?" I nodded. "Yeah, it's no big deal." But it was a big deal, because a week later, on the morning of my birthday, I woke up and found her gone. At first, I thought maybe she had wandered off, gone exploring. I searched the nearby parks, calling her name, but as the hours passed, the truth sank in. As I was rushing home, I saw Phil in his car, speeding down the street. The wheels screeched like a rat scurrying away from danger. And in the back window of Phil's car, there she was, Cora, riding off with Phil. None of it made sense. None. I burst into the house, my stomach churning with dread. The door to the safe was wide open. Every single card, Gehrig, Cobb, all of them was gone. And so was Cora. I felt sick. I tore through the house, hoping it was some mistake. But I knew. I knew what had happened. She had used me. She had waited, learned about the cards, about the safe, and when I carelessly mentioned my birthday, she used it to steal everything. The realization hit me hard. She wasn't some lost, innocent creature. She was a rat, through and through. And she had teamed up with Phil to take everything from me. I sat down in the middle of my living room, my head in my hands. How could I have been so blind? How could I have let myself fall for her? I guess the lesson here is simple. Don't trust a rat. But damn, it hurts all the same.